Sarah's life shattered the day she gave birth to black triplets, despite both her and her husband being white. Thrown out of their home and robbed of her savings, she endured years of threatening messages and violence from the man who once promised to love her forever. 13 years later, as another brick crashes through her window, her ex-husband appears at her door, tears streaming down his face. What he revealed that day left her speechless. The winter morning started like any other at Memorial Hospital. In the maternity ward, the delivery room was filled with the cries of newborn babies as Sarah lay exhausted but happy. After 9 months of anticipation, her triplets had finally arrived. But when the nurse placed the first baby in her arms, Sarah's smile froze. The second and third babies followed, and with each one, the tension in the room grew thicker. The babies were black. Sarah and her husband David were both white. David stood motionless at her bedside, his face turning a deep shade of red. The look in his eyes changed from confusion to rage in an instant. Without a word, he stormed out of the delivery room, leaving Sarah alone with her newborns and a room full of awkward medical staff. Minutes later, he returned with a duffel bag. "Pack your things," he growled, throwing her clothes onto the hospital bed. "I want you out of my house by the time I get home." His wedding ring clattered on the floor as he threw it at her feet. Sarah's pleas fell on deaf ears as David marched out, slamming the door behind him. Her perfect world had just imploded, leaving her alone with 3 hungry newborns and nowhere to go. Thankfully, Sarah wasn't completely alone. Her sister Emma rushed to the hospital as soon as she heard what happened. Without hesitation, Emma helped Sarah pack her belongings and offered her spare room. "We'll figure this out together," Emma promised, cradling one of the babies while Sarah held the other 2. The first few months were a blur of sleepless nights and endless feedings. Sarah took a night shift job at a local supermarket, while Emma watched the babies during the evening. During the day, Sarah would care for her children while trying to catch a few hours of sleep. The exhaustion was overwhelming, but she had no choice. She needed to provide for her family. Just as Sarah was starting to find her footing in this new reality, another blow struck. She went to withdraw money from her joint account with David, only to find it completely empty. Years of savings, gone. David had taken everything, leaving her with nothing but the small paychecks from her supermarket job. Desperate and angry, Sarah filed a police report for theft. That's when the notes started appearing. The first one showed up in her mailbox. A simple piece of paper with cut-out magazine letters. "You'll regret this." Sarah's hands trembled as she read it, but she tried to convince herself it was just an empty threat. Then more notes came, each one more menacing than the last. "Watch your back. Those bastards don't deserve to live. Sleep with one eye open." The police investigated, but there was never enough evidence to prove David was behind the threats. The notes were always anonymous, the handwriting disguised, no fingerprints to be found. Sarah's anxiety grew with each passing day. She started taking different routes home from work, constantly looking over her shoulder. Emma installed security cameras around her house, but the notes kept coming. The situation escalated when one of the triplets came home from school clutching a note that had been handed to them by a friendly stranger. The message inside made Sarah's blood run cold. "Your mother is a lying whore who deserves what's coming." Sarah and Emma filed restraining orders, changed their phone numbers and tried everything they could think of to protect the family. But the threats continued, becoming more frequent and more violent. Then came the night that changed everything. Sarah was putting the triplets to bed when she heard the crash. Glass shattered in the living room, followed by the thud of something heavy hitting the floor. Emma rushed upstairs, phone already dialing 911. In the middle of their living room floor lay a brick wrapped in paper. The note attached read, "The next one will be for your head." That night, as police officers combed through the broken glass and took statements, Sarah and Emma made a decision. They couldn't live like this anymore. The children deserved better than to grow up in constant fear. Within a week, they had packed their essential belongings and moved hundreds of miles away. They left no forwarding address, told no one where they were going. It was like starting over from scratch, but Sarah would do anything to protect her children. In their new town, Sarah slowly began rebuilding their lives. She found a job at another supermarket, starting again at the bottom. But this time, things were different. Without the constant fear hanging over her head, she could focus on work and her children. Her dedication paid off, and within a few years, she had worked her way up to management. The triplets thrived in their new environment. They made friends, joined sports teams, and excelled in school. Sarah watched them grow with pride, amazed at their resilience and strength. They rarely asked about their father anymore, and Sarah was grateful for that small mercy. Emma remained their rock, helping with childcare and providing the emotional support Sarah needed to keep going. Together, they created a new kind of family, different from what Sarah had imagined for herself, but filled with love nonetheless. Years passed, and the memories of those threatening notes began to fade. Sarah still checked over her shoulder occasionally, still startled at unexpected noises, but the paralyzing fear had subsided. Then came the triplets' 13th birthday. They were celebrating in the backyard of their modest home. Emma had outdone herself with decorations, and the kids were running around with their friends, playing games and enjoying the party. That's when Sarah saw him. David stood at their garden gate, looking nothing like the successful businessman she'd married. His clothes were wrinkled, his hair unkempt. His eyes were red and swollen, tears streaming down his face. Sarah's first instinct was to grab her children and run, but Emma had already called the police. They could hear sirens in the distance. "Please," David called out, his voice breaking. "I need to tell you something. Something I've known all along." The party had gone silent. The triplets stood frozen, staring at the father they barely remembered. Sarah stepped forward, placing herself between David and her children. "The babies, they're mine." "They were always mine," David choked out. "My mother! She had an affair with a black man. I carry those genes, even though I look white. I've always known it was possible." Sarah's world tilted on its axis. "What?" "I used it as an excuse," David continued, his words tumbling out. "I was seeing someone else. She convinced me to leave you, to take the money. I was a coward. I couldn't face what I'd done, so I blamed you instead." The police arrived before David could say more, leading him away in handcuffs for violating the restraining order. Sarah watched him go, feeling strangely empty. The truth she'd waited 13 years to hear wasn't at all what she'd expected. Later that night, after the party guests had gone home and the triplets were asleep, Sarah sat with Emma in their kitchen. They talked about David's revelation, about the years of fear and struggle, about everything they'd been through together. "Do you regret filing that police report?" Emma asked, "even though it led to all those threats?" Sarah looked out the window at the peaceful night. "No," she said finally. "That was the moment I stopped being a victim and started fighting back. Everything we have now, our home, our peace, the kids' happiness, we fought for all of it." The next morning Sarah watched her triplets getting ready for school. They were talking and laughing, completely unfazed by the previous day's drama. They had grown into confident, happy teenagers, untouched by the hatred that had once threatened to destroy their family. David's revelation didn't change anything, really. These children were hers, had always been hers. The truth about their genetics didn't matter nearly as much as the truth about their family, the one she and Emma had built together, founded on love instead of lies. As she hugged each of them goodbye, Sarah realized that sometimes life's greatest blessings come disguised as its greatest challenges. Her world hadn't ended that day in the delivery room. It had just taken a different shape. And maybe, just maybe, it had turned out better than she could have ever imagined.